Is this Notre Dame's season-defining moment already in Week 3? It's not technically do or die, but the stakes are massive, and the Irish have a chance to prove that they're built for it. My full preview and prediction for Notre Dame Texas A&M is coming up next.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up? Welcome in. This is Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I'm a Notre Dame alum, producer at Fox Sports, and I've been covering the Irish for the past 5 years. I am thrilled to have you here with me on Wednesday, September 10th, and thanks for starting your day right here by making this your first watch or listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Before we get rolling, I'd like to remind you to please subscribe on YouTube or wherever you are listening to the podcast. I really do appreciate it and helps the show a ton. And don't forget, Friday is mailbag day, so drop your questions in the YouTube comments or send them to me on social media at Locked On Irish on X or at Locked On Irish Pod on Instagram. All right, we have got a massive game on tap this Saturday as Notre Dame takes on Texas A&M in South Bend, the home opener for this Notre Dame Fighting Irish team in the 2025 season. It's a top 20 matchup. Notre Dame is ranked 8th in the AP poll. Texas A&M is ranked 16th, and this is a huge game for both programs. First, I'm going to lay out why this feels like a must-win game for Marcus Freeman's squad, and then we will dive into the scouting report on the Aggies. We're going to talk about what to expect from their offense, defense, and of course, special teams. And we're also going to break down the keys to an Irish victory. Finally, I'm going to close things out with my predictions, but we begin with what you need to know. This is a must-win game for the Fighting Irish. It might be the last ranked team that Notre Dame will play in the regular season. Kickoff is set for 7:30 p.m. inside Notre Dame Stadium, the first home game of the year. I will be there in attendance. I cannot wait. I expect the environment to be awesome because for as much as we complain about how Notre Dame can be a little bit sleepy at times during home games, when it comes to big games at night in prime time, I know that the Fighting Irish faithful are going to deliver, and I expect that in a big way on Saturday. The game is going to air on NBC with Noah Eagle and Todd Blackledge on the call. And the weather was looking prime as of yesterday, but now there are a lot of clouds in the forecast, which is better than rain, but still, you kind of want a beautiful sunny day on the first home game in South Bend. It's going to be mostly cloudy skies during the day with a high of 84. So even though the sun won't be out a whole lot, it's going to be hot and a little bit sticky because, man, it can get humid this time of year. I do not miss the days when I was living in Dillon, which did not have AC around this time of year. Me and all my friends would cramp into the living room in the quad and then create a tunnel, like a vortex with fans and things like that, and we'd still be sweating our way to sleep. But that is not what you came here to watch or listen to. You did not want to hear about my dorm experience in Dillon Hall. We're going to talk more about Notre Dame Texas A&M. This will be the 7th meeting between the two schools and only the 2nd inside Notre Dame Stadium. Notre Dame leads the all-time series 4-2, and as you probably know, they squared off to start the season last year in Kyle Field. It was Mike Elko's first game as the head coach of the Aggies. It was an awesome game, electric atmosphere, and the Irish rallied late in the fourth quarter to win 23-13. Mike Elko is in his second year as the head coach of the Aggies, and he has a 10-5 record overall as their head coach. He was Notre Dame's defensive coordinator back in 2017, right after the complete overhaul that Brian Kelly did after the abysmal 4-8 season. He brings in Mike Elko. Elko revamped the Notre Dame defense, and then he bolted after 1 year for a big bag and a big paycheck at Texas A&M, where he was their defensive coordinator from 2018 through 2021. Then he became the head coach of Duke, and after 2 years as the head coach of the Blue Devils, Elko returned to College Station to replace Jimbo Fisher. This year, Texas A&M is 2-0 after beating UTSA 42-24 in the season opener, and they followed that up with a 44-22 win over Utah State last week. Right now, you look at FanDuel, Notre Dame is favored by 6.5. I think during the offseason, it was around 7.5, so the line has remained pretty steady, but the over-under has actually gone up to 49.5. So Vegas is projecting something along the lines of a 28-21 win for the Irish. Now, when I look at this spread, I'm a little bit surprised because I view this as a toss-up game between two very good teams, but make no mistake about it, this is absolutely a must-win game for Notre Dame. Starting off 0-2 would be like failing your first two big exams, your first two major assignments of the semester. You're technically still alive, but now you are staring at the syllabus like it's an obituary. I have been in that position before, and I promise you, it is not a whole lot of fun, because whenever you put yourself behind the 8 ball early on, the rest of the semester becomes miserable. Every quiz, every paper, every class, every project has to be perfect. The stress mounts, and even if you do everything right, it still might not be enough, because your final grade also depends on factors you can't control, like how the professor curves the class. And suddenly you're not just focused on your own work anymore. You're hoping that people don't show up for group projects and the smartest kid in class slips up, so you just have a chance there at the end. That is not an enjoyable way to live. It does not make for a fun few months. And that is exactly where Notre Dame would be if they lose to Texas A&M and start off 0-2. Technically, 2 losses would not eliminate them from the college football playoff. Last year, 2 schools made the 12-team playoff as at-large bids with 2 losses during the regular season. It was Ohio State and Tennessee. Penn State, Texas, and SMU all had 1 loss in the regular season, and all 3 of them lost their conference championship games, so they entered the playoffs with 2 losses, but only 1 in the regular season. Clemson had 3 losses in the regular season, but they won the ACC championship and had an automatic bid to the college football playoff. Arizona State also had 2 losses in the regular season, but they won the Big 12 championship game, and they had an auto bid as well. But here's the catch. The ones that did had at least 1 marquee win on the resume. Miami, on the other hand, went 10-2 with the number 1 overall pick and a Heisman finalist at quarterback, but they did not have a single ranked win, and they were left out. That is the danger for Notre Dame, because when you look at Ohio State last year, they had a win over Penn State on the road, a top 5 team. Tennessee beat an Alabama team who was number 11 going into the final CFP rankings, so they had big wins. You look at the rest of Notre Dame's schedule, outside of maybe USC, there aren't many chances to pick up a ranked win. Maybe Navy sneaks in there, but the committee is not going to really value that win a whole lot. So Notre Dame is in a very interesting spot, because this is probably their last big game in the schedule, and obviously they don't have a conference championship game to get the automatic bid in the playoff. So yes, they could win out after a loss this weekend, but it's not guaranteed, and it would turn the entire season from championship contender into damage control. The margin for error would shrink to 0, and style points would suddenly matter every single week. That would just be a really stressful time for the team, the fan base, everyone involved with the program. And also, momentum matters. Notre Dame was riding a tidal wave of momentum after last season's run to the national championship game, and they had a really strong offseason. Losing again 0-2 to start the year, and technically their 3rd consecutive loss dating back to last year's national championship, would erase a lot of that momentum, and for the rest of the fall, Notre Dame would be fighting uphill just to get back into the national conversation. The best way to avoid all that stress and all that pressure is to take care of business on Saturday. You ace the second exam, and suddenly the semester feels wide open again, right? A win keeps Notre Dame firmly in the playoff mix. It shows that they can compete with and beat an SEC team yet again, because they beat the SEC champion in the college football playoff last year. They beat Texas A&M in the regular season last year. It would make a national statement and keep the buzz around this program alive. That matters for fans. It matters for recruiting. There's going to be a ton of visitors on campus this weekend, so this is a very big weekend on the recruiting trail as well, and for the confidence of the team moving forward. The schedule eases up a lot after Texas A&M, which means this game is the swing moment. Win, and Notre Dame has serious runway to keep improving while stacking wins, but if they lose, the season becomes a grind where every single week feels like life or death. Now, to Marcus Freeman's credit, he has been excellent at getting his team to bounce back after a loss. He has only lost back-to-back games in the regular season 1 time. Is his first 2 games as the head coach back in 2022. Since then, he is 7-0 after a loss in the regular season with an average margin of victory of 24 points. But this is not just about bouncing back anymore. This is about keeping Notre Dame's season on schedule and proving the program belongs in the top tier of college football. So, if Notre Dame wants to stay in the playoff race and keep the momentum alive, Saturday is not a test that they can afford to fail. It's one that they have to ace. So we know the stakes are high for Notre Dame, but what exactly will they be up against on Saturday? Let's dive into the Aggie scouting report right after this. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how we craft every model. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard and every crossover SUV, you could drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Today's episode is also brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend, time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For Notre Dame, it was CJ Carr who delivered in a big way during the fourth quarter of their season-opening game against Miami. We all remember his no-look touchdown pass to Micah Gilbert for his first career touchdown pass, but how about when he stayed cool, calm, and collected when the Irish went down 14 points? When the pressure was on, he came through. No hesitation, no delay. And just like CJ Carr delivered for Notre Dame, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep the streak alive, fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply, promo period through November 18th. All right, let's dive into the scouting report for Texas A&M, and we will start with the Aggies on offense. Colin Klein is in his second year as the offensive coordinator for the Aggies, and he is one of the most respected minds in all of college football. If you don't believe me, just ask Marcus Freeman, because Marcus Freeman almost hired him to replace Tommy Rees back in 2023. It didn't work out for him in Notre Dame. He ended up at Texas A&M, but he is known for leading a balanced physical scheme with an emphasis on the quarterback run game. He was actually Will Howard's offensive coordinator back when Howard was at Kansas State before he ended up transferring to Ohio State. I watched them play a lot back then, and let me tell you, Will Howard might not have ran the ball a ton with the Buckeyes, up until the national championship game at least, but he ran the ball quite a bit. When he was with the Wildcats, he was a true dual-threat quarterback, and Colin Klein loved to run him and then take some shots downfield. On offense, I think they look a lot more explosive this season than they did last season, thanks in part to some upgrades at the wide receiver position, but also they were not playing very strong competition. UTSA, Utah State, not necessarily the most stingy defenses in all of college football. So this is going to be a big step up in competition for Texas A&M on offense, but they bring back all 5 starters in the offensive line. Marcel Reed, their quarterback, looks a lot more comfortable throwing the ball, but I do have questions about whether he will look as good against top competition like Notre Dame. But still, this is a very strong unit. I think one of their biggest strengths is their continuity. Shout out Charlie Wooding. I got the pronunciation right this time around. They bring back a very veteran offensive line that has over 3,600 combined snaps. They have a much more balanced attack so far this season. Last year, when Marcel Reed came in and became their starting quarterback in replacement of Connor Wigman, who was the starting quarterback against Notre Dame last year, I don't think Marcel Reed even had a snap in that game. But once he came in, they were very run-heavy. They could not really throw the ball with Marcel Reed. But so far this year, they've been balanced. They have 610 passing yards to go along with 343 rushing yards through 2 games. I already talked about the receivers a little bit, talked about them a lot with Carter Carroll's on the Insider preview that came out on Monday. But man, they are explosive. They brought in some major upgrades in the transfer portal. Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver from Concepcion was from NC State. Craver is from Mississippi State. They have already been producing a ton of chunk plays through 2 games, and they're also very efficient in the red zone. So they can beat you vertically, or they can kind of work their way down the field and then capitalize when they get in the end zone. That has been a staple of Colin Klein offenses. He schemes well inside the 20, and they like to use Marcel Reed as a weapon once they get into the red zone, much like Notre Dame did last year with Riley Leonard at quarterback. They have converted on 5 of 6 red zone opportunities this year, and they actually finished 29th in red zone TD percentage last year. So Notre Dame is definitely going to have to get stingy when Texas A&M gets close to the end zone. A couple players to keep an eye out for. I already talked about one. Quarterback Marcel Reed, he is number 10. Dual threat, dangerous runner, inconsistent passer. He is excellent in clean pockets, and so far, UTSA and Utah State were not able to generate much pressure on him, so he was kind of slinging it all around the field, but he's notoriously poor under pressure and in third and long situations. He is Texas A&M's leading rusher with 105 rushing yards on the season and a touchdown. He's averaging 5.8 yards per carry. Notre Dame is going to have to make sure that they know where he is every single time that he drops back to pass, because he could absolutely take the ball on a scramble or even on a designed run, although they have not done that a ton so far this season. In the offseason, I said that Marcel Reed reminded me of Brandon Wimbush and that he was a great runner, not a great thrower of the football, but so far he's proven me wrong. We'll see if he does that on Saturday, though. At running back, a name to keep an eye out for, Le'Veon Moss, number 8. He's physical, he's explosive, he's really strong after contact, but he is coming off a very significant knee injury that he suffered in November of last year. They basically kept him in bubble wrap up to this point, but I think they're going to feed him the ball early. It's clear that he's like a medical marvel. The fact that he's even out there on the field after suffering that injury not that long ago is impressive in its own right. But like as we've seen from Notre Dame players, like they're not fully back to 100% 8 months removed from a torn ACL. So they're going to feature him, but is he going to be the 100% elite running back that was like preseason All-SEC and all that stuff? We're going to find out. Wide receiver, Concepcion is number 7. Craver is number 1. These are not the biggest guys. KC Concepcion is 5'11", 190. Craver is 5'9", 165. But damn, these dudes can fly. Craver has 13 catches for 236 yards and 3 touchdowns already this season. Concepcion has brought a punt back to the house, so they are very good. Left tackle, Trey Zune, number 60. He's their best lineman, the leader of the group, but he is battling a minor injury. We'll see if he plays. Marcel Reed also suffered an injury against Utah State. Mike Elko has said that both of those guys could have come back in the game, but he opted not to bring him in because by that point, the game was already well in hand. As for their weaknesses, I think if they can get pressure on Marcel Reed, he has a tendency to hold the ball a little bit too long, and he's more turnover prone. He threw 6 interceptions last year, including 1 in each of his last 5 games. And their pass pro isn't that great, despite the fact that they bring back a ton of experience. Last year, their offensive line allowed way too many sacks when you consider the experience in that group. Their running backs aren't very good in blitz pickup either. They gave up 23 sacks last season, which was 57th in the country. And so far, their one weakness on offense is that they're pretty inconsistent on third down. They have converted on just 8 of 24, and they have a poor track record in some of these clutch passing situations. And like I said, keep an eye out for Reed and Zune. They've been banged up. Mike Elko says they're ready to go. We'll find out come Saturday. So the keys for the Notre Dame defense, they have to win the early downs. Force Marcel Reed into third and long situations because that is where he struggles most. And for Notre Dame, you can do that by being aggressive early. Like Notre Dame looked way too passive on defense against Miami. The linebackers in the secondary were spending too much time reading. They were hesitant. They were not spending enough time pursuing. Miami didn't run for a ton of yards, but they consistently won on early downs, and that put Notre Dame's defense in a disadvantage, and it just is how Miami continued to move the ball effectively, especially in the first half and that first drive in the second half. Notre Dame's defense also has to get pressure without losing contain. Force Reed to throw under duress, but you have to prevent scrambles. I would expect a little bit more zone coverage from the secondary in this game so that they can keep an eye on Reed's scrambling ability, because when you're playing man coverage and the defensive backs are running with the receivers and they're just trying to stay with them, sometimes they can lose sight of the quarterback, and that's where Reed can burn you on a big play. The last key for the Notre Dame defense, you got to tackle in space. You got to limit Concepcion and Craver's yard after catch ability, because every single time these guys get the ball, it is a big play waiting to happen. And Carson Beck at Miami thrived by getting the ball out quick on Notre Dame, and Concepcion and Craver are like better versions of Malachi Toney. So they're going to try to get them the ball quickly, and it's going to be on the Notre Dame defensive backs to make a tackle when they get their opportunities. All right, let's switch it over to the other side of the ball. Take a look at Texas A&M on defense. Jay Bateman is their defensive coordinator, but Mike Elko calls the defense. They were solid, but they were not elite last year. They're good overall, but they're like a step below some of the top-tier units in the SEC and the rest of the country. So Mike Elko and Jay Bateman have worked together a lot, and they like to create a ton of havoc plays on defense. They'll bring in exotic sub-packages. Sometimes they'll be like one defensive lineman and 7 linebackers, so you don't know where the rush is coming from, and they'll give you all kinds of exotic looks. They're basically the opposite of a bend-but-don't-break defense. They're going to get after you. They are going to make some plays, but it does make them susceptible to giving up some explosives. They have a lot of depth. They have a lot of experience, particularly in the back end of that defense, but they are missing the 3 NFL draft picks that made up their defensive line last year. Still, One of their biggest strengths is they are disruptive. Top 15 in the country last year in havoc plays. And havoc play is a team's tackle for loss, passes, defense, and forced fumbles. So basically, when they are creating plays on defense. And so far, through 2 games, they're one of the best defenses in the country when it comes to creating havoc plays. They're also very good on third down. This is like a Mike Elko staple because he'll throw you all these exotic looks, right? They were 33rd in the country last season. And so far this season, UTSA and Utah State were not even able to convert 1/4 of the time on third down conversions, less than 25%. They're very versatile. Yes, they lost Shamar Stewart, Nick Scorton, Shamar Turner, but they've got athletic guys on the edge and experienced linebackers and defensive backs. So they are really good at disguising, and they've got a bunch of experience as well. A couple key players to know. Yes, they lost those 3 NFL guys in the defensive line. The next one in line is their edge rusher, Cassius Howell. He is number 9, their best pure pass rusher by far. He had 3 sacks in a row against Utah State. That's right. He had a sack, then another sack, and then yet another sack on the same drive. But he can be a little bit vulnerable in the run game. Really good at getting after the quarterback, not so much when it comes to stopping the run. Another defensive lineman to keep an eye out for, Albert Regis, number 17. He's their anchor up the middle. He's physical. He's tough to move around. And then at linebacker, number 21, Torian York. He is the team captain. He's the heart of the defense. He's instinctive. He's a really good tackler, really good blitzer. He can do everything well. But when Jadarian Price scored his touchdown run against Texas A&M last year, guess who had the angle on him and didn't make the play? It was Torian York. So very good player, someone Notre Dame is absolutely going to have to respect, but he can get beat as well. And then in their secondary, Will Lee, number 4, he's their top outside corner. He's long, he's physical, he's really competitive when the ball is up in the air. So if they try to go at him with Malachi Fields, that is not going to be an automatic catch for him. And then at safety, Bryce Anderson, number 1, very athletic, very good in coverage, but man, he is a liability as a tackler, which leads me to the biggest weaknesses for Texas A&M on that side of the ball, and it's tackling. They were one of the worst tackling teams in the country last year, especially at safety, and those missed tackles piled up against Notre Dame. It's a big reason why Notre Dame ended up winning that game. And this team allowed 19 missed tackles in week 1, and because of the missed tackles, that leads them to some explosive plays allowed. I got this stat from Jamie Uyama from Irish Sports Daily. Shout out to our guy, always so good with these previews and scouting reports. He has the stat on Texas A&M. They were 92nd in plays of 20 or more yards allowed last season, and it wasn't just wasn't just against a pass, it wasn't just against a run. They were 86th in 20-plus yard runs allowed and 82nd in 20-plus yard pass plays allowed. This year, another weakness for them has been their run defense. They are 68th in the country in rush yards allowed per game, despite playing really poor competition. They allowed 177 yards and 2 touchdowns to Robert Henry Jr. on UTSA. They were a little bit better against Utah State, but they also allowed runs of 30 yards and 18 yards in that game. So, needless to say, the number 1 key for the Notre Dame offense is let 4 in 24 cook. Notre Dame has got to force feed the ball to Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price early and often. It might result in a few stuffs, but if they keep working it, I'm confident they're going to break off some long runs, and I have a feeling they're going to make this a point from the very first drive. And who cares if Texas A&M knows they're going to run the ball? Just beat them, because when you have running backs that are this good, sometimes the rules don't apply. If you can get Jeremiah Love the ball and give him just a sliver of space, he could be gone, which is exactly what happened on his game-winning touchdown against the Aggies last year. But it's not just about establishing the run. They have to stay on schedule, because third downs are where Mike Elko is at his best. CJ Carr is making his 2nd career start. They're not going to play him as conservatively as they did against Miami, but still, you never want to put any quarterback, let alone a quarterback making his 2nd career start in third and long situations consistently, especially against a defense who has as many playmakers as Texas A&M, but is also so good at disguising and just confusing the quarterback. If you saw Bryce Underwood, the quarterback at Michigan, trying to figure out what the hell Brent Venables and that Oklahoma defense were lining up and what they were doing against him, he's a really, really talented player. He had no idea what he was seeing. You cannot put CJ Carr in a similar situation, but I would say that Elko is just as good as Venables as disguising their defense and just making life hell for the opposing quarterback. And last key for the Notre Dame offense, target their boom or bust tendencies, run some hard play action, maybe even some trick plays or just some mixed direction plays so that they can take calculated shots off the run action and all the different things that Texas A&M is going to try to do. A&M is going to make some plays. It's just going to happen. They've got good players over there as well, but they're going to be vulnerable for a few deep shots or some big run plays, and Notre Dame did not take enough shots against Miami until their backs against the wall. Well, now their backs are against the wall for pretty much the rest of the season, and they need to be very aggressive on offense early on and take advantage of their opportunities when they get them. All right, we've gone through Texas A&M on offense and defense, but there's still one phase we cannot overlook, special teams, and I do expect the third phase of the game to be a major factor on Saturday night. After that, I'm going to wrap things up with my predictions. That's all coming right up. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet, whether it be player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little bit more energy to your Sundays. All right, my pick for this week, Thursday Night Football coming up tomorrow night. Right now, the Packers are -3.5 on FanDuel against the Commanders on Thursday Night Football. I love Jane Daniels. I love what the Commanders are building. But you know what else I like a little bit more? The Packers defense. They looked unstoppable against the Detroit Lions in the season opener. So give me the Packers -3.5. If you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Today's episode is presented by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. One of my favorite things about Monarch is you can identify all sorts of things you might miss, like maybe you aren't saving as much as you thought. Monarch helps you notice an inefficient investment allocation and discover forgotten 401ks from past jobs. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. All right, let's keep it rolling with a Texas A&M scouting report by taking a look at the third phase of the game, special teams. And look, I feel like Notre Dame has a distinct advantage in the third phase against pretty much every single team they play, except for this one. This matchup looks pretty even to me. As a matter of fact, Texas A&M might even have the edge, which you do not normally say when Marty Biaggi is the special teams coordinator at Notre Dame, and when you consider the emphasis that Marcus Freeman places on special teams, they almost always have the advantage. But man, Texas A&M is really good in this phase. Let's explain why. So their return unit is really, really impressive. They have Terry Bussey returning kicks. He is an elite athlete, could play offense, could play defense. You give him the ball in his hands, he is dangerous. He is averaging over 30 yards per kick return this season. In Casey Concepcion, the transfer from NC State, he is their punt returner. He's already brought one punt back to the house. He did that in the season opener against UTSA. And Mike Elko has said they want to be the best team in the country when it comes to returning, whether it be kicks, whether it be punts. And up to this point, they have proven that if they're not the best, they're certainly at the very top. But it's not just the return game. Their kicking game is really, really good as well. Their punter, Tyler White, is one of the best young punters in the SEC. He has excellent hang time, and rarely does he allow a return on the opposite side. And their kicking situation is so interesting to me because their kicker is Jared Zirkle, number 99. Don't love that as a kicker, but Zirkle won the job over Randy Bond. And Randy Bond was their kicker for the last 3 years, and he was a damn good one. He is 59 of 77 on field goal attempts in his career. That's just under 77%. And he is 8 of 11 from 50 or more yards. And Mike Elko said that Jared Zirkle beat out Randy Bond to be the field goal kicker by a wide margin. So if Bond is kicking, 76.7%, and he can really bang it from deep, 8 of 11 from 50 plus, I mean, how good is Zirkle? He hasn't really had that many opportunities this year because they've just been beating the crap out of teams, and they score a touchdown seemingly every time they get the ball on offense, at least against the bad teams. But that's pretty crazy to me that Zirkle could just go out there and win the job over a guy who's been really, really good in his college career. So for Notre Dame on special teams, the key is simple. Do not allow Bussy or Concepcion to change momentum with an explosive return. On kickoffs, they got to boot the ball to the way back of the end zone. When James Darnell's out there punting, he's got to hang that thing in the sky for so long that everyone on the Notre Dame punt team has time to get down there and make sure that Concepcion does not ever have a chance to return the ball. You force the issue as well whenever you have the opportunity to. Run a fake reverse on kickoff return. We saw them do that, but they actually ran the reverse to Jordan Faison in the college football playoff game last year against Indiana. It was a great play. Honestly, Jordan Faison probably should have taken that back to the house. He got tripped up on that play, but that is forcing the issue. They need to block something. They need to block a punt. They need to block a field goal. They need to make a play on special teams to win this game because they cannot afford to lose this phase, and it's going to be pretty hard to just keep it even. So if Notre Dame wants to win in the third phase, they're going to have to go out there, they're going to have to be aggressive, and they're going to have to take it. All right. We're through with the scouting report. We've covered offense, defense, and special teams. It is time for predictions. So last season, this felt like the most obvious underplay of all time. And that's exactly how it played out. You had two elite defenses going at it, two new quarterbacks, although Connor Wigman had started a couple times for Texas A&M. He was still very green, and Riley Leonard had experience. He just didn't have it in the blue and gold. It was the first game of the year, so it made sense. And then sure enough, Notre Dame wins 23-13. That under hit. And for most of this offseason, I thought we'd see a repeat of that same script in this game, but not anymore. I don't think this is going to turn into a full-blown shootout or anything like that, but I do expect a lot more points this time around. Texas A&M is going to try to push the ball downfield with their speed at wide receiver. They saw Miami hit a couple big ones on Notre Dame, and I guarantee you that this Aggies team feels even better about their wide receiver room than the Hurricanes do with the way that Concepcion and Craver have played so far this season. I would be shocked if they don't take at least 3 deep shots at Christian Gray until Gray proves that he can hold up. Gray is a very good cornerback at times, but sometimes he can get beat on the deep ball, and they're going to try to use their speed on their perimeter, and it's up to Christian Gray to show that he's ready, but it's also up to the safeties, like Adon Schuler, to step up after a disappointing performance against Miami. And Jalen Stroman, who flashed in that Week 1 game as well. What can he do in coverage to help out the cornerbacks and make plays when the ball is in the air? And don't be fooled by what A&M put on tape on offense in these first 2 games. They've been very vanilla, so I expect to see more designed runs with Marcel Reed. I think they're going to feed the ball to Bell and Moss at running back, and these guys are dangerous when they take off. So this is not going to be the same A&M offense that we saw last year when Connor Wigman was leading the show, and he looked like a deer in headlights going up against Al Golden's unit, and he was puking on the field and all that stuff. But this ain't the same Aggie defense either. They don't have Nick Scorton. They don't have Shamar Stewart. They don't have Shamar Turner wrecking games on the defensive line anymore. They've got some experience at linebacker and in the secondary for sure, but outside of Torian York, I don't really see a bunch of NFL caliber dudes back there. They're going to make plays for sure, but they are beatable. And for Notre Dame, the key is simple. You've got to stay aggressive. Notre Dame's offense was at its best when they had no choice but to cut it loose against Miami, and I expect them to come out swinging early in this game. Will that lead to a CJ Carr turnover? Probably, but they can't play scared. They need to take shots, and when they do, I think they'll hit on enough of them. Ultimately, though, I think this game comes down to Notre Dame's running backs. That was the difference last year. Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price made the 2 biggest plays of the game, and that is why Notre Dame won. They were not featured enough against Miami. This time, I expect them to be front and center. They are going to be the engines that carry this team. Notre Dame's offensive line also has a lot to prove after they got embarrassed last week against Miami, and I think they're going to set the tone early. They're going to give their back some space, and they're going to take advantage of it. Carr is in a huge spot. Second career start, first time at home. There's going to be a lot of pressure. The lights are going to be bright. How does he live up to the moment? Well, I thought he did really good considering the circumstances against Miami. I think he's going to be even better in this game. He might make a couple mistakes. It's probably going to happen, but he's going to steady the ship when it matters, and he's going to hit on some big-time throws. The A&M speedsters, they might have some nice plays and spurts, but I trust Notre Dame's defense to pressure Reed enough, force him into mistakes, and get the key stops that they could not find against Miami. And this time, they're going to do it in front of a home crowd that is starving for a bounce-back game. So give me the Irish 31-24. The Irish get the win. They get the cover, barely. And when the clock hits 0, we're all going to let out a collective sigh of relief and start feeling very fired up about where this season can go. All right. That's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for making this your first watch or listen of the day. If you have not already, please make sure to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a like, rate, review. It really helps the show grow. And don't forget, Friday, mailbag time. Drop your questions in the YouTube comments or send them to me on X at Locked On Irish or on Instagram at Locked On Irish Pod. I'm going to be back right here tomorrow morning with recruiting analyst Eric Thomas to preview a massive weekend for Notre Dame on the recruiting trail as the Irish are going to host a loaded group of visitors for the Texas A&M game, including several 5-stars. Going to be a huge weekend. You're going to want to learn more about it, so make sure you tune in tomorrow. Also, be sure to check out Locked On's college football kickoff show on Thursday, only available on Fire TV. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow.